you doing? Gorgeous. Oh, aren't you lovely? Hello. Want to share your purr with the world? There's a good minute of quietude. You are beautiful. Look at you, eh? So gentle. So gentle. So peaceful. Alright, I'm going to go for a walk. And good morning. So, introducing you there was the neighbourhood, dare I say, stray cat. Not really stray. We've started to feed it, and it's an ex-domesticated cat, and it appears to just now remember what affection is, and just wants to be cuddled. There are times we go to put the food down and it enjoys a bit of cuddle time. I think that's very telling. We can argue that there's a communication barrier, that we don't speak the same language. I was told that music and maths are examples of universal languages. When interacting with an animal that has previously known affection and has a natural disposition towards affection, even over food, I think we're all better off for a little bit of loving. I'd like to say that is the purpose of some of these videos. I think my topic yesterday covered a little bit why I don't like to just launch into technology, even though if my waking existence is dealing with tech issues, then it's naturally easy for me to awake in the morning and launch with themes that might be relevant or at the forefront of my mind because I've recent experience with them. Hey, goodbye. I do find that the human engagement aspect of life is where it's more at, and we're addressing common human elements. I believe it's a book. It's the Road Less Travelled, not the Path Less Travelled. M. Scott Peck. And I might be shortchanging the fellow a bit by breaking down my understanding of who he was. But my belief is that he did psychoanalytical work, or counselling, if you will, for a community that had a broad spectrum of people, but due to the nature of being possibly not just a capital city, he sort of saw a wide spectrum. And it allowed him, in his regular dealings with the same people over a lifetime, or a long service time, to come to realisations about the commonalities of all people. So in the book, I believe it's the Road Less Travelled, and he gives us, if anything, a common language with which we can engage with others, knowing that irrelevant of the language we speak, or quite specifically the suburb we were raised in, that the human heart or the human mind, both operating together, have certain needs to be met, certain traits they exhibit when, I guess, expressing pain or dealing with the confusion that might be the stumbling blocks along life's road. I do feel a theme I've picked up in the last few days is that my likeness to use old sayings as a way, I believe in my time, when I was growing up, they were just a common way that we could all communicate that showed we had that familiar baseline. And, I mean, it expedites conversation. We don't have to, when introducing any given term or word, do a game of charades to try to explain what we're trying to express. And so a familiar baseline is, I believe, quite important. When we can have a familiar baseline to such important things as the human condition, I believe that the value of said texts, like The Road Less Travelled, are invaluable. I also find that as life has gone on, due to the speeding up, Gleich, I think, wrote a book on faster, everything, having less time to develop, either as people or our own thoughts on any given topic, it's not to our betterment, and it does mean we're shortchanging ourselves. The benefits of common ground and communication is so vital. And so I find it alienating to the core audience I would seek to continually drivel on about technology. But then there's also a thing, I guess, called right vocation. And if the path in my life is serve me a good hand of cards regarding the tech world, then commentary on technology is probably the fairest, and a tribute that I don't know, I feel there's no real qualification. I learnt that growing up. I worked for many IT businesses. It was weird because as a teenager I'd worked on my own, but quite often when moving around the country to follow my child, I would find myself in the employ of others, and often for hourly rates below $10 an hour, which is illegal by any standard in my country. But this nature of there's not really an award, maybe there is now, I don't know, but that the IT service industry didn't have necessarily training courses. And you can say, oh, but there's Microsoft certified professionals, MCPs and MCSEs, and a whole range of specifics regarding Microsoft. But of course, when you're employed in an IT shop, you're not employed as those positions. You'll be retail sales staff. And so, whilst you might only spend less than 3% of your job out the front of the foyer engaging with clients, and all the rest of your time doing tech work on the back benches, a fair argument there would be that any operating system could come in. You don't need to just be Microsoft certified. And the reality is that generally there's a range of hobbyists that are quite happy to take the role. So it's a role that you generally want to bring as much and a timeline of understanding, because familiar issues seem to be cyclical. They do seem to come up again. They can represent themselves in a range of ways. So there is an advantage to having experienced things previously, knowing, confident ways of handling said issues as they come up. I'm trying to take a wider stance with this video and work along the line of parallels. Not so much that the human mind we're robotic and can be programmed, but more along the lines of, from the perspective of healing, that we can treat ourselves in such a way that certain repeatable methods might bring about certain repeatable outcomes. With regards to medicine, I believe I'm one of those in the camp of treat the cause. Modern medicine is all about treat the symptoms. If you haven't beat the underlying cause, you'll get all new symptoms as the issue represents itself, again to be fixed and fixed again. And so really that's sort of where we're at with the human race. It's that business will always evolve to find a way to take a sucker's money. If you've been trained to think at the top levels, all the sorts of statements and lines of logic they use to dehumanise the process that is pushing money uphill. It's the only way to really nurture top-level executives. Because if we were allowed to operate the way our moral code, our intrinsic beliefs hold us to do, much of what is happening in the modern world simply would not have gotten to the position where we're at all. So we're in hard times. No business can operate competitively if it operates in a way that is weak, right? And so if business's primary goal is to make money, and it might not be written into every mission statement, but it's fair to say that it's kind of an important thing, especially if you're listed in the public stock exchange. If you're trading as a public enterprise, if you've got shareholders, you need to be accountable towards profit. Once upon a time, businesses weren't swallowed up by bigger businesses and swallowed up by bigger businesses. And the reason why you can't be competitive, the only way to be competitive is to make the most amount of money, because if you don't, your competitors will grow more powerful than you, they'll have more money than you, and they'll just buy you up. All right, so just closing out that thread. But once upon a time, that wasn't the way businesses worked, and there was a level of satisfaction. There was accountability because you were in your local suburb, working for people that you would see on the weekend or in other roles in your community. And that level of accountability. And it might just be that you go home and you have dinner with the wider family, and the feedback from a grandparent or a parent directly would really make you contemplate your shoelaces and think, well, I should do things a little bit more pro-community. A family reputation is valuable. again, that's the first thing they're going to train out in the upper level executives of any large organisation. It's all just about the money. And while we do this, every aspect of every product just becomes worse. For me, it's most obvious in what we call the human interface design. And any IT structural, anything you were building, be it software, be it hardware or software, when it came down to the interface process, you really put the minimising of the interactee's time as number one. So if it was a product they were going to interact with infrequently, to the point where there was no reason that they should have to memorise all the controls, you might use a different control system or structure or layout to one that you would expect them to use. Well, it's like they know, like a well-fitting glove, the product. They can rely on muscle memory and they can rely on familiarity. And now in the modern world, I look at just about every product as having the worst human interface design that's humanly possible. Whilst more money is poured than ever has ever been poured into the development of these products. And I skirted around it a little bit, I believe in a previous video this week, but a metric was realised quite a while ago now, that the longer a person interacts with your object. Now just imagine you're a mobile phone manufacturer, because the example then fits neatly. But that they figured out that the longer a person interacts with your product, the more likely it is that they're going to spend money. And so we found all of our operating systems all re-engineered to change up the way they work. And all the common applets that we used to have all basically got stripped out of them in a way to force us to go via their storefronts. If anything, when setting up the product to get familiar. For example, if the basic feature of a computer when they first came to the planets in everybody's lounge rooms, possibly in the 80s, was math functions. Generally they were the big calculator. And when smartphones came to market, one of the most useful things they brought for everyone was things like a basic calculator. Certainly by the time they went touchscreen, it was mad to consider that you could have a one device to rule them all. That the sorts of tasks that we would typically give to a computational device would be those math functions that a calculator performs for us. And so a calculator has always been the included applet. And it amazes me how many modern devices somehow have stripped out the features and the things we've always had in a way that when we're setting them up we go, oh, I need that. Better go to the store and grab that. Case in point, I like to make this a little bit personal, so it's not just someone talking, disembodied voice. I feel disenchanted. That's probably the purpose of my consumer awareness videos. That none of us individually have enough power to be relevant to any of the big companies. But yeah, I haven't installed the video codec that I use on most of my cameras on just about any computer. It totally limits my ability to edit footage or even review recordings before uploading. And so there's many a time where I'm certainly not the first person to watch my media. I'm all right with that. But I must admit, I don't have an editing process in place, and that makes me a weaker channel, especially when the nature of these talks is non-scripted. The reason I'm happy to perform this way is that it's really reassuring, I believe, to other human beings that it's all right to stumble and make errors. Now, getting back to that theme of, well, we just don't have enough time. Why would we want to watch a longer than need be video? Well, I mean, I agree with that too. Really, we need to redress one such that the other is no longer an issue. It would be nice if we could have more time, more so for our loved ones, which is my greatest sin, I believe, in making long, drawn-out videos, is that the genuine time I'm robbing of people could be better utilised elsewhere. But if we're coming along for crunchy entertainment, or we're coming along for the peaceful nature, arguably bushwalk, then slowing down of the pace of communication is a part of the healing process. But what's the point of healing? I mean, we need to gravitate in a direction, right? It's one thing to be healed. We can all stand around and sing Kumbaya, great. But what direction are we heading in? And that's probably the aimlessness of my channel generally. If in my videos if I don't take us in a direction, if there's no purpose, right? If people don't leave comments for me to explore thoughts further or redress topics that might be brought up, which sort of had been my hope for the longest amount of time, and that hasn't been happening. So knowing that if I am just talking to an echo board, if I need to possibly expand on some of my thoughts in the hope that at a later stage that somebody can come and have a full topic broken down rather than me skirting around bits of it across a few videos. Or being more practical with our time. It's true, I would like to work towards a world where everyone has a longer working life. I say that if you hear my tone of voice being fairly neutral to that. You say our work shouldn't cause us stress. And in a hierarchical structure which isn't just about pushing the money uphill, but a fair sharing of the profits for everyone, such that if you do the uncomfortable work, sure, there is better remuneration for it, but also in the nature of when we all stand together, the output is greater, and that there is therefore greater profit to be drawn upon. And so first and foremost, we need to prop everyone up. We need to remove the fears that underlie people. And so essentially making sure that the shelter and the food components are just a safe, bit of a given, if you will. That's kind of important. And so as a way to operate over longer lifetimes, there's lots of things that we used the Industrial Revolution as a way to lower costs of production. But as an example with agriculture, what we know is that human interactivity improves the yield. And even the nature of what really raised Japan as to being one of the leaders in manufacture was the walk the floor concept. And I've certainly seen it with regards to occupational health and safety and just general involvement and engagement of every worker with regards to any business, is that level of responsibility mattering. If everything matters to everyone, but not in a way to generate more stress, but in a way to allow them to feel more empowered with the day-to-day operations, that their feedback isn't lost to an inhuman chain and never followed up on or never reciprocated, that the person's been heard, and that the further training with correctly identifying issues or correctly awarding or rewarding for the stitch in time saves 9. Again, I like my sayings. But when we put the involvement of the business at the interest of everyone on hand, when we have less stress because everything's just running better, either because attrition is less, because the employment, the quality of life, quality of employee is improved. At so many different levels, there's ways to lower the stress, but it is a bit of a paradigm shift, because it's one of those things where one thing leads to another. So if we try to see any aspect of it under the current paradigm, the true advantages of it aren't really grasped. But this notion that, and I go back to the example of agriculture, is that children at a younger age than what we currently consider employable can certainly walk the haphazardly planted groves and pick up the fruit that's ready to go, or being guided by, maybe more elderly, what would have previously been past a retirement age, but people who like to go out for their morning walks, certainly in nature. They can grab the low-hanging fruit, if you will, check it for ripeness. But you can see, traditionally in most cultures around the world, we've had the grandparents raising the children, because the usefulness to society of the middle-aged people, the people in between, is too practical as a resource to let escape us. And so there is natural implicate order, I guess. There's time-proven ways of living that just need to be re-implemented. Because whilst we keep racing to this, got to make more money for one or two big businesses, the ones that keep swallowing up all the traditional methods and all the things that have worked for us that might not be quite as profitable. They are more profitable in the long run, because the problem with these big organisations that collapse, and the problem is with all their branching divisions that invest large amounts of money riskily into concepts that might not be proven, is that if we kept sustaining the tried and true, we're often better off. Now, there is, of course, a perfect middle ground, and I do believe with the usage of kinesiology, and that's not the sport muscle movement, so to speak. The Australian Institute of Sport would have kinesiologists in a way to improve running the 1 minute mile, as an example. But kinesiology as an energy science is a way to get a yes or no answer to any question that can be asked. And I do believe that the dependence of the human race to be run by individuals and not artificial intelligence that's sampling off the best of statistics. I.e., if we replace the boardroom, and basically it's what they want anyways, to take the human component out, right? The nature of they've got to make money, right? Eventually someone's just going to flick the switch and go, well, it's just easier to hand it over to AI, because humans want to be human. So this nature that the way we're going, the concept of humanity managing itself is a short-term step or stage before we finally go, well, hang on, we can make more money if we hand that over to, typically the most expensive wages in any organisation are the ones at the top. So at the very least, someone will be able to justify it, and a boardroom will sign off on it. And lo and behold, a sampling of statistical averages will equal a normalcy, and no more thinking outside of the box in ways that might be productive. Or, they might revolutionise and say, well, hang on, most profits have generally come from the shooting star, one in a million concepts. Maybe we need to put all of our chips into that basket. It'll just be some error that any human being would have just gone, no, hang on, that's not right. But it'll arguably be unchecked, or it'll be too slow a process to intervene. If we slow things down and get back to what serves humans better, which is greater interaction, greater eye contact, greater all the things that actually matter, that it basically lead to improved customer service, improved human interactive design, that allowing us to have consistent methods, it just lowers the heart rate, it extends the life. And quality of life is the number one metric. The time innings that we have is equal to that. It's part of quality of life. The light that burns twice as bright burns half as long, so we don't need that. We need to have that extended quality of life. Nice long lifetimes, but not in a way that governments calculate and go, we can't justify an extension in the retired group because the cost to society of people that aren't serving us And the extended cost of medicine to support them is just getting crazily out of hand. And so again, no current paradigm supports the rethink and the way that we need to change up to in order to make the human, I guess it's the great filters, right? We need together as a unified planet, right? Because corporations are bigger than countries. So now our individual governments can't implement the changes that are needed to be pro-end user or pro-civilian, because the corporations they've got more power nowadays. So really, we need to get back to a state of thinking about, we might grow crops globally. There might be aspects of shuffling them around the planet, but there's ways hierarchically that we as humans, if we unify in the right way, we bring the costs down, we increase our potential power, our resilience, our strength to outpunch what has essentially become the worst of business, the nature of these corporations and the way they work. And we've just seen inside of basically in 10-year cycles how any one technology can just run so far aground or so far lost at sea, depending on where you feel that you're standing or wish to be heading, that these things get out of control very quickly. And so in a small amount of time, if it's what the end users are championing, once business gets a wind of that, once they figure out, that's where the money is, you can just count down the number of years until the products become so poor in quality or so manipulative of our time that we ultimately lose out. And so knowing that we can't continue down that path, any other option becomes viable, right? At no other time in history is hippies, why? Peace, love and happiness. No. Right? It doesn't put food on the table, or whatever. Right? It's fair to say that the beliefs of even 30 or 40 years ago are now so outdated because of the level of engagement, interactivity that we all as a human race now have, but also what we've seen, even more recent world events in the last decade that have shown us we need greater resiliency. We need the ability as people to put people first rather than profit first. Because, and I'll give this as an example with what happens when business is led to run amok, is that we have weaponized medicine. Now, let's explore that statement of what is weaponizing medicine, right? Because it's not true that the actual individual words is not what's happened. But from the point of view of business, what we've done by having nobody accountable for a leak through an air conditioning system or whatever it may have been, anyone who comes up with a solution to the problem becomes instantly rich. Now, the nature of medicine is that you work with various strains of sickness in order to find solutions, which means there's lots of research labs all around the planet in little vials with all sorts of sicknesses as they try to find solutions to known sicknesses. But now what we've established is that if your research grant is denied, or if for some reason, the wife and kids are going to leave because you're just not earning enough money, this nature of, oops, crash, tinkle, tinkle, because if you release it, you're in the best position to have the solution to it. Now, of course, the scenario won't be as simple as that. The way businesses work is they have multiple branches. The reason they have multiple branches is that if any of them become accountable for any given accident or issue, there's a finite amount of money to be handed out to a litigious society that will want to take it. And so it'll probably be different businesses or friends, drinking partners, people that know each other from the pub. One might have created a problem and one might magically have the solution. But needless to say is that at some level, money will be involved. Someone will have thought out of a way to make more profit from it. It's just like if you're the caterer to the war machine and it's a time of peace, it's like, well, no, you want to sell your food. You've got all this food, you've got all these contracts, you've got all these commitments in your production lines and your supply lines to keep, and you want to keep the lowest cost of adoption or cost of product available to you, which might require certain minimal orders. And so you need a certain amount of order in a minimal way to ensure that profits keep going uphill. And this nature that every quarter has to be profitable, that alone restructured certainly the IT world, going as far back as the 90s. Microsoft as a corporation realised that releasing an Office product once every 7 years, or however often it would happen, meant you get lots of profit that year and maybe not so much in the years around it. So there's this nature of, well, we want to rent you software because it ensures constantly quarterly profits of going uphill, because just the sheer nature of more people on a planet with a growing population, at a time of peace when more people are adopting entertainment and technology at a growing rate, you're going to have an increased number of subscriptions constantly, which guarantees a rate of growth constantly, which if you're the chief executive officer, somebody that needs to have led that company to profits rather than having a downturn, trying to explain to investors why there's a downturn. Oh, we only release that particular product every blah, blah, blah years. Right, you can just avoid that conversation. With, is it prior planning prevents poor performance? It's quite easy to restructure, and that's essentially what we've had happen, is that the quality of the iPads as an entertainment tool or an education tool in that first decade of ownership of them, or the first decade they're on the market, they were fantastic. And then somewhere around the mid-2010s, 2016-ish, 2018-ish, most software companies started to transition to a, you don't own our software anymore. You can't buy a lifetime license. Everybody moved into the, you can rent it from us market. And so that's the direction we've gone in. That to me seems unsustainable. If I wish to retire at some stage in my life, at the stage in my life where I'm going to have the most amount of free time to finally use all the tech products and things that I've spent my hard-earned money buying, and just when I finally get the time to use them, if I, in my later stage of living where I don't have an income because I've, worked for government or worked at a standard 9-to-5 job with a standard 9-to-5 wage or paycheck, and I didn't create intellectual property, I didn't create things that were going to net me permanent royalties. When I hit my retirement, will I have the money to pay my monthly subscriptions for entertainment? Now, I'm a big fan of owning all my compact discs, all my music. I've got many thousands of compact discs. It's impractical to carry them around with me. It's quite easy to rip them digitally and put them on a small thumb drive or memory card. But at any given moment, a forced update to a media player, as an example, with what came with Microsoft Vista, an operating system, and it went in and it catalogued against users' wishes all the music catalogue on their machine and deleted the first 4 seconds of every song. Wiped it. Now you can say it was an accident. It was coincidentally at a time when Microsoft was releasing a music player to market, and the nature of digital stores and being able to buy your music. Microsoft makes many accidents that work in their favour commercially. They never get accounted. There's no frontier law in the digital realm that makes the punishment greater than the evil. And so a lot of these businesses realise, well, if we finally get caught out for it, and if we finally get dragged through the courts for it, and if we finally have to pay a fine for it, the fine is never as big as the amount of profit we actually generated, and that the power that money gave us in the short term to play other money markets and to do other things to generate more profit. And so again, the corporations have this complete freedom because of a lack of what I call frontier law, where the punishment should be worse than the crime as a strong deterrent. And again, the big businesses, they just have teams of people that just figure out ways around what we've socially always had as a way to keep these things in check. So we do need to restructure. We do need to unify, because individually we just don't have the power. And once upon a time we could elect officials to run our countries, and we trusted that by giving the power to a team of people or an office of people that we'd be looked after. But the corporations, their operating budgets and their sizes arguably they now are larger than many of the countries around the world. And so the pool of the individuals, we just have none. We have no power. And so we do need to unify. I don't mean this to be a downer video. Quite the opposite. It should be an empowering video. If there's any thoughts here that I've raised today which might be interesting, I again ask, leave a comment. I can carry them on. If you wish to push me forward towards independent journalism, I presently have about 20 odd subscribers, which is not enough to upload directly to the internet. Otherwise I could... my process of making these videos is drawn out a lot because of the stages that I have to go through, because I can't just go direct. But for the format I do, where they're unedited, and it's, as I say, I can't even watch them, so I have no problem with putting them straight up. So more subscribers would be great, but also an aspect of financial independence. I mean, I'd like to do reviews, independent product reviews, because I find that all the journalistic channels are basically bought out, and that we get given misinformation because the corporations have an easier time making a worse product, or one that's more profitable for them, and just putting a lot of money into the advertising channels is just an easier solution than actually building it right in the first instance. Anyway, lots of reasons to back or support. I'd say we want independence. We need independent thinking. I'm certainly pro-community, and I'm here at your service. I'd like to see you in another one. Well wishes with you. You have a great day.